and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. I am Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And I'm Ricky Siegel, a certified sex therapist and supervisor.
And I'm proud to say my brother.
Cheers to that.
Welcome. Good to see you. So glad to do this with you.
And welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. Cheers.
Indeed.
With our ritual sake toast. Kanpai.
Indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. That's good. That's good. I like that blend that you made.
Thank you very much. Getting fancy.
Indeed.
So this is our weekly forum for talking all things sex, but every day should be sex talk time because we're not good at it. We don't do it often enough. Our sexual health is dismal, and people really need to be having conversations. Parents with their kids, partners with their partners.
Everybody with everybody, really. That's kind of what it comes down to, right? And if you have any ideas of things to talk about or suggestions for people to talk about when it comes to sex and sexuality, or you just have any questions that you want answered, let us know. We'd love for you to subscribe, like, hit the notification, do all that stuff that you do on YouTube and Facebook to
spread the word.
Help it keep growing.
Share with your friends.
Indeed. Indeed.
And, let's drink a toast to all our old high school friends on Facebook. Stumble upon this and go, look what those Siegel dudes are doing.
Cheers.
Seicho.
Right. And one more quick toast to all of you who have been with us all of this time and have continued to watch and join the conversations. Many of you even being on the show. We really, truly appreciate you. So thank you for staying with us. All right.
Especially our sexologist colleagues who get to have the privilege of talking about sex for a living, as we do.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. A hell of a thing.
Yeah.
To do this for a living.
It's easy to joke about, and it's weirder in the sex ed days, right? It always struck me as weird when people's reaction to, you're a sexuality educator, is like, ooh, like what about that do you think is sexy, right?
Well, there's one of two. That's one of two responses, right? There was either that, you are a sex therapist or a sex educator. Ooh, kind of like you have sex with them. But the other reaction is like, oh, you're a sex therapist? I don't need that.
But sex therapy is a lot sexier than sex ed, right? Sexuality education as a field is not sexy. Why? People come and pay money to have better sex? And are grateful and thanking and hugging. But
they also come into you in sexual misery.
Yeah.
Which is something you don't really get in sex ed.
There is a kind of a skewed view when you just see fucked up people with problems and sexual misery.
Yeah.
But when we can turn that misery into joy.
Absolutely.
Right? I was talking to, I don't want to miscredit, one of our brilliant students who's working with trauma, who said that trauma therapists, first of all, it's a lot more comfortable, right? This is an observation I've been sharing a lot lately. It's easier for most therapists to talk about a person's most painful, horrendous, abusive sexual experience than to talk about their most ecstatic.
Well, pain is easier to talk about than pleasure.
And we're supposed to be there. We're supposed to, you poor thing, and we can help you out of this trauma and what happened to you. But to talk about sexual highs and sexual wants and desires and pleasures, most therapists go, I can't ask about that.
Right.
It's too uncomfortable.
Well, how many times have we heard from therapists?
You talk about rape and violence and kidnapping, that's not uncomfortable.
And how many
pleasure
times have we heard from a lot of those therapists that, no, I can't just ask them about that. I have to build up to that.
Right.
We have to create a relationship.
We have to have a rapport.
First. Yeah, that's what they're there for.
Therapist was saying trauma therapists are trained to kind of neutralize the trauma and bring them from triggered and traumatized just to this neutral. What about the rest of the way to sexual re-empowerment and reclamation?
Which is what I always did. Right? And remember when I joined that practice years ago? It had to be, in 1996? 96.
No, early.
Yeah, early, maybe 94, I think it was. Yeah, 94, where I joined that practice, and it was all intensive, experiential, all trauma focused.
Right.
And I was really the only one that not only was really talking about and bringing sexuality, not just the sex, but sexuality into the picture, but I would always have a little conflict with my, let's say, my boss, who was, the owner of that practice, that during a lot of that experiential work, she would sort of bring people up to the point of like opening them up, tearing off that scab and then leaving them. And we always kind of had a little conflict because I believe that you should never open somebody up if you're not going to kind of close them back up, or at least patch them back up so that they're fine, not just these, open festering wounds.
Right.
And it got pretty hairy sometimes doing that kind of work, but I see that we constantly hear this from people without people even knowing that they're doing this. How many times do you ask somebody, well, what do you like? And what is their response?
Everything they don't like.
Everything I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. I said, well, wait a minute. I didn't ask you what you don't like. I asked you what you do like. And it's the same thing when you pose a question of what do you want? Well, I don't want this and I don't want that. So I think it's easy to see that pain is easier for people than pleasure.
Yeah.
And the don't want and don't like, I put in that pain category.
Yeah. But sex is supposed to be in the pleasure category all the time. Sex is not supposed to be a source of pain or guilt or shame or havoc and a lifetime of wreckage and carnage and abuse. Yet we live in a sexually unhealthy culture and society. And so those are the results. Right?
Exactly.
If we can't even talk about it, how can we expect to do it well and really be present and enjoy and...
And I think there are certainly some exceptions where people kind of come into, we're sort of born into that, we come into this world with that sexual legacy already attached to us. And I think some people do a good job as they're living their life, as they're discovering who they are, of changing the direction of that on their own. Some people are able to do that with help and with education, with therapy. They're able to really make a shift into very healthy, positive sexuality. But unfortunately, what we see is that most people carry that through their lives, and especially into their older years. It becomes this sort of lifetime perspective that most people never get out of. So as a result, right, how often are we dealing with all of this sexual misinformation when it comes to aging, when it comes to what is sex supposed to look like, whether it's accepting no sex or thinking you're supposed to be functioning like you're 25.
Well, but what was that? The question? Would you expect people to have sexual problems when they get old?
Well, let me to reframe the way I hear it a lot, and I think the way we all hear it a lot. And this is the way I frame this question to all of my students, right? Regardless of what level they are, and usually it's either college, university, or medical, nursing schools, and professional. And I'll ask this same question. Is it normal to experience sexual problems as you get older?
And everybody says yes.
Universal, right? It's 100%. The answers I get back are yes. And I think that's symptomatic of how bad we are at all of this stuff.
And there's something else we don't talk often enough. I'm glad we should talk about sexuality and aging, and even kind of peculiar that it was another sort of accidental late career specialty for you, right? You just kind of found yourself with a new expertise and training hospital administrators and nursing home and health, what do they call them, RLFs or HLFs?
Yeah, I mean, just senior residences,
right?
Assisted living facilities, independent.
That always, traditional tendency to desexualize old people the same way we desexualize children. and assume that if you're past whatever certain age, 70, 80, 90, you're not supposed to be
Right.
sexual anymore because
Right.
you're old. And what was the line you had with to the hospital administrator?
Oh, when I was again, that's what really prompted that sort of late
Yeah.
career new specialty. As I was doing consulting with this nursing home and establishing policies and doing staff training so that on sexuality so that they're able to do a
Yeah.
better job. And as I was talking with this nursing
Lesson
home
one,
administrator,
they're adults. Treat them
That's
as
right.
such.
That's right.
Give them respect and privacy and dignity.
oh, I got a lot of T-shirts around that one.
Yeah.
But basically, as I was talking with this administrator, and I'm looking at how they're handling it and the way they think about it, and as I'm talking to her, it really hits me. And I even stopped. And I looked at her and I said, you know what? In 20 or so years, you're going to have me. And you ain't ready. and I mean that was my aha moment, right? That was
Today's grandparents are not your grandparents'
That's right.
grandparents.
That's right.
And while we bemoan the fact that we're stuck on that very younger edge of the baby boomer generation, guess who we're seeing showing up in as seniors now? The front edge of the baby boomers. Right? So aging hippies now. Someone who's 70, when we were growing up, a 70-year-old knitted sweaters and sat in rocking chairs and walked on the boardwalk.
Drooled a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Today's 7-year-olds ride motorcycles and go to concerts and smoke weed and have sex.
And play tennis and are active. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is very different. And these systems have to change.
Absolutely.
They really do. They have to
you
change.
You can't just pretend that when somebody hits a certain age, that their sexuality just goes away.
That's right. And even in people that acknowledge, continuing sexual interest in later years, going back to sort of that original question, right? The assumption that sexual problems are a normal part of aging. And the way I frame that to my students is that sexual changes are a normal part of aging. Sexual problems are not. And we've so taken for granted. And I think with a lot of things in life, it's another example of how because something is so common, we assume it's normal.
Right.
We assume it's supposed to be that way. And yeah, granted, there are a lot of older people with sexual problems. But we shouldn't just accept it so easily.
I think if, again, a lot of times sex therapists deal with this, helping people reframe and understand that they're not problems, they're changes.
Yeah.
And that we can't have sex at 60 the way we did at 20. And that it can be good, great, as good, even better.
Even better.
Different.
Yeah.
And sure, but that's really important about changes versus problems, right? Like the really cynical older sex ed days, a time or two refer to teen pregnancy as an STD.
Yeah.
Right, and now I think the same frame shift, aging is seen as a sexual dysfunction.
Right.
And doesn't have to be.
No, it really doesn't.
So is can a guy be guaranteed that he could look forward to the same kinds of erections 40 years into the future? Well, maybe not.
Well, I would ask that same guy to ask himself if he's had right now in that moment he's asking that question about the future. Are you having the same erections now as you did 20 years ago?
Or how will you be living in 20 years? Will you be healthy? Will you be exercising? Will you be sitting on the couch and obese and having diabetes and high blood pressure and wondering why you don't see your penis anymore?
That's right. Right. And again, we can't really talk about sexual health, especially as we age, without talking about overall health. Right? I mean, if you're 180 pounds overweight, if you haven't moved in decades, if you, like you said, have not seen your penis in years, don't expect a healthy, vibrant sex life. Right? I mean, that's just basic common sense.
Right. But adjustment to I would just add a third one, right? Adjustment to problems.
Okay.
Right. So let's say a guy has this kind of organic, physiological ED that Viagra, Cialis, all those drugs aren't going to work. Injections almost always work, but let's just say for sake of argument, this guy's not getting erections anymore.
Right.
Advanced diabetes, neuropathy, whatever the condition might be. Does that mean his sex life is over? And you have to go back to that male script.
Yeah.
Right? Certainly in the past, generations past, when guys grew up referring to their penis as their manhood, well, if it don't work, I don't work, so what's the point in living?
That's right. Now, there's at least two things there that I want to pull out. Because again, this is a pun intended, actually. These, I think, speak to the crux of a lot of the problems that we have in understanding sex and sexuality. That, number one, sex is defined as intercourse.
Right.
And number two, for guys, sex is defined almost exclusively by the function of the penis. Right? And there's something I find really sad about that.
Yeah, it's pretty ripping yourselves off.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheating yourselves out of an awful lot of enjoyment.
That's right.
I mean, it's obviously the male script, right? We talk about this all the time. Most guys are working harder than they're playing.
Right.
And sex that's supposed to be fun and playful and pleasurable is like serious sweat-breaking performance pressure. Hence, a lot of the sexual problems. Right.
And what is the work mostly about?
Their performance.
Right. But
the worry.
But whose pleasure? The work.
Well, in the script, it's hers, but he has no idea how his actions connect to her pleasure.
Exactly.
In the vast majority of cases. Right? Yeah. So that get it up, get it in, move it back and forth until the magic happens, and then you've succeeded. Then you can let go and get it off and get it out and get a snack. Right? But that in between, what's happening? Oh, I don't know. She moaned, I must be doing something right. And okay, was that woman that said, forget the Viagra, just put a map of the clitoris on the box?
Yeah. and again, you're also talking about another important aspect of this part of that sexual script is what are we using for feedback, right? And I've had a couple that literally had this, where he would describe how good he is at finding her spots and making her and he hears it. Oh, I hear her moaning. I know I'm doing good, so I do it even more. And meanwhile, she's there thinking, get off my hair. Right? So I was talking with one of my classes this morning about that too. That if we look at, or if we take as feedback just what we hear or facial expressions that we see, right? The sound and the face of pleasure and pain are the same.
Yeah.
So if you just heard somebody moaning in agony or moaning in pleasure, you won't know the difference. If you saw the facial expressions,
you should ask.
Well, see, but that's the thing. That's what doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
The asking, the communication, the using your words does not happen for most people sexually.
That research, Debbie Herbenek and her group at Indiana, that 31% of women reported experiencing pain during sex is so horrendous. Because first of all, it was all women, not older women.
Right.
And people think older women are more likely to experience pain because of hormones or
dryness,
aging tissue.
And, yeah, exactly.
No, I bet that most sexual pain that women endure, and that is the word for it, is because of clueless partners. Right.
And again, going back to what we started with before, what we take throughout our lives, what the messages and the perspective that we take into our older years. That's one of them for a lot of older women.
Yeah.
So for a lot of older women, it's even harder sometimes to identify issues or possible problems that they may have because they're so used to uncomfortable sex.
Well, someone who spent 30 years having sex because she believes it's her marital duties, like taking out the garbage and making dinner for the kids, she ain't having such a great time anyway.
Right.
So...
Right. So what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Right. And nothing is different. Right. So what are some of the things? Since we're kind of on this, thematically looking at aging, and since we've been talking about how changes are a natural, normal function of aging, not necessarily problems, but changes. What are some of the changes that most people can actually expect to experience as they get older? Particularly, and when I say older, I'm talking about past 50, generally, and again, as somebody who's 60, past 60. Right? That's going to be that's now my reference point.
No, I think it has to move with us. Right now, it has to be past 70.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm...
Keep moving the goalpost.
58 and a half.
Uh-huh.
Oh, boy.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, generally speaking, certainly not for everyone, generally speaking, things take longer. Right, and the formula, which never changes, it's the same thing when guys are dealing with Viagra from their urologists, right? Because urologists don't know from friction and fantasy, and that's the same with Viagra or without Viagra. Right. Instead of like taking the pill and just waiting for something to start happening, like Jack and the Beanstalk beans. So things take longer, sometimes more of a requirement to be able to really stay in sexy thoughts and stay present, and longer to arouse, longer to full erection for guys, longer to reach orgasm. Of course, as we were saying, it's hard to tell where medical problems affect sexual function, and they get called sexual problems. But what was the statistic about the number of meds the average American over 60 is on?
Oh, well, they're basically living independently. It was 7 meds. If they're in a facility like a nursing home, like it 30? Jumps up to like 14. Yeah.
So all of those medications tend to have effects on overall sexual function. So I think more than trying to compare or anticipate, the focus should really be on that changing. What does sex look like now at this point in our lives? And being creative, right? Because also this is another thing. A lot of people who come to sex therapists complaining of sexual problems are in the context of a relationship where it's really a relationship problem.
Right.
People are sick of each other, or they don't see each other as lovers anymore. Or, every time I try and have sex with my wife, I lose my erection. And it never happens with my secretary. Well, these are not sex problems.
I mean, how many dirty looks have I gotten from sex therapists over the years when I make statements like, it's kind of, at least at the time, it was a little bit more true. But it's not as common as we like to think that we get real sexual problems. Most of them are sexualized problems.
I've always agreed with that. Even if you look in DSM at the list, there's not that many.
Right.
There's just, maybe a dozen.
Right.
Quote, sexual dysfunction.
Exactly.
All the penis problems, right? Too fast, too slow, or losing the erection. That's about it. And they all relate to anxiety, and they all have similar ways of approaching putting them behind you. Women, orgasm problems, anxiety, difficulties letting go, these are like what therapists refer to as psychodynamic,
right?
Those underlying issues.
Right. And I would say that, while sexual problems can often result in relationship problems, more often than not, it's the relationship problems that make the sex the casualty.
Sex takes the hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the relationship problem that is expressed or manifest in the lack of sex or the sexual difficulty they may be having between them.
Same thing, again, as folks get older and take more medications and with the prevalence of antidepressants. Yes, we know that some of those, especially the Prozac family, the SSRIs, have these notorious reputations for causing sexual side effects, usually delayed orgasm.
Right. And lack of desire.
But very often this is a person who's depressed in a long-term, unsatisfying relationship. Right? So, you know, we talk, oh, well, how about getting his testosterone checked? My retort was, how about a lap dance test? Right? If that guy is getting a lap dance from the object of his fantasy and then going, oh, friggin' Celexa, then I'd say we have a problem.
Right.
But if he's saying, you know, is that the relationship is unsatisfying, or it's sexless completely, or they're like roommates, he's depressed, is it the depression? Is it the antidepressants? Is it the relationship? Is it the lack of joy in their lives? You know,
I mean, that's the investigative work that sex therapy really does involve.
Yeah.
But again, that's an important point about even the SSRIs that I think we had. You know, we caused a little stir at a conference presentation. We were talking about that stuff one time, and it was a good kind of stir. You know, where there was like, it was sort of like a wow, never thought of that before. But you know, as people are talking about, well, the antidepressants do this, and we're like, well, wait a minute, stop and think why they were taking antidepressants. When we talk about side effects of medications, we're so quick to sometimes ascribe the cause to that, when in fact, how about depression? How about what they were going through that necessitated those meds?
Depressed people don't often feel a whole lot of ba-ba-boom for sexy time.
That's right. So we can say that for pretty much most people, getting older, that the arousal process may take longer. One of the things that people should really also look at as they're aging and, you know, getting into those end parts of their life is looking for new ways of stimulating. Because just because something was stimulating you all these years doesn't mean it will continue to do so. So sometimes it's about looking for new ways to stimulate. Guys may find out that not only is it maybe takes a little bit longer, takes a little bit more stimulation to get an erection, but now it may be harder to keep that erection and maintain that erection. Women,
now again, just as an adjustment, instead of seeing that as a problem, if an adjustment would be something as simple as you know, wearing a bracelet to help keep blood in the penis, or taking a pill, that's a livable adjustment. It doesn't have to be like a handicapping
that's exactly
kind of a thing.
And by the way, this is the first time I've ever heard that referred to as a bracelet.
No, I mean a bracelet, not a cock
a bracelet
ring.
bracelet. Oh, okay.
Mean, like,
I thought you were talking about a cock ring.
Cock ring is a little off-putting to some people, but I mean like a bracelet with a snap. If it fits around your wrist, it'll fit around your, like not just your penis, everything. Penis and the scrotum and the whole thing. And that way, if he gets nervous, he could just pop it off. Yeah, I find cock rings freak out a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Because some guys think it's just a gay thing, and other guys are afraid, what if I need to get it off and I can't? And
they get stuck.
Yeah. So
I've definitely heard that.
Bracelet with a snap.
Okay, so
Pop it right
so
off.
there you go. So there's an accommodation, right?
Yeah.
But one of the expectations I think people should have is, as they're getting older, the expectation should be that they're going to find a new level of normal, as opposed to continuing to try to recreate all of their past experiences. Because that is, I will guarantee disappointment if that's the goal, if that's kind of the focus. Right? So time, patience, and I'm also going to say acceptance of the fact that, you know what, sometimes the penis is just not going to do what you want it to do.
But again, a good shift is another favorite Marty Klein quote, because it makes people go, what? Intercourse is the only sexual activity that requires an erection.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
So
you know why you go like that, right? Because of the script that says sex is intercourse, and everything else is just fooling around.
That's right.
Well, enjoy your fooling around.
Exactly.
You'd likely get off on it.
Exactly, and that's the
very
point.
satisfying sex life.
Right? Guys, you are more than just a penis. So if at some point, at some time, the penis is not doing what you want it to do, you're still a sexual organ from head to toe. Look at all these other things that you have that you can use to pleasure somebody with. Right? And again, going back to it's a little sad that it really speaks to just such a scarcity of creativity to think that being sexual only is about a penis.
Yeah, right. I love that activity from Wayne Pulowski of just putting body parts on the board with arrows. You know, it usually starts with penis and vagina, and then you start adding more and more body parts, and the board is filled with anatomy and arrows going all over.
That's right. And I think it's worth mentioning too that for a lot of elderly people, right, there are a lot of people that I've spoken to in their 80s,
not like us.
Right? Yeah, no, we're not elderly. Not yet. But we'll say in their 80s and even in 90s that they'll tell you they're married or they're in a relationship, and you ask them, it's like, well, do you have sex? Oh yeah, we have the best sex life we've ever had. And then you find out it doesn't have anything to do with intercourse. It doesn't even have anything to do sometimes with what people call sex. Sometimes it's just an intimate, it's just a touch, it's just the being together. And again, it's not about what you're doing, it's about what you're feeling and what you're sharing with that other person. And you can have the greatest sex life that anybody has ever had and never have intercourse. Right? So it really is about expanding that repertoire. Right. And as we get older, I think it's more important to expand that repertoire, to think of other ways to share sexual pleasure with yourself and your partner that does not have to be about intercourse. Right? You know, if you take away penis, you take away vagina, you're really not sacrificing a whole lot when it comes to the wild world of sex.
Well,
right? I mean, it's the main, but again, I'm going to stand by that statement, because unless you are planning a pregnancy,
right,
it's not necessary. It really isn't. And even I would say the same thing, because as people get older, there's going to be maybe more of a delay in their orgasm or ejaculation ability. Right? And okay, can sex be pleasurable if there's no orgasm or ejaculation?
I just thought of like spinal cord injured folks whose brains somehow find a way to shift what is an orgasmic kind of trigger, and might have an orgasm from stimulating here or here if they can't feel anything from their shoulders down. They're still sexual. They still have a brain, the main sex organ of the body. They still have skin, the biggest sex organ of the body. And they can shift and find a way to,
And that's really the key to sustaining sexual activity, sexual play, sex through the lifespan as we get older.
Yeah, we've talked on previous shows of all the health benefits of
that's right.
Orgasm and all those feel-good chemicals our brains are packed with.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really no downside to it, but we have to accept the change. Right? So key words that should stay with us as we go into our later years, I think one is creativity. The other is adaptability. Right? And I'm going to even add separately, you grammar folks who can take issue with me, but I'm also, in addition to adaptability, going to add adjustment. Because there's a lot of those adjustments that need to be made in addition to just adapting to maybe a changed situation. Right? And you know what most older people, right, 80s, 90s, their biggest complaint or the biggest reason why they will cite if they don't have sex? Lack of a partner. Not lack of interest.
Right.
Although there's a higher percentage of that in older women. Because again, it's a much older script. I married my high school sweetheart. I had my marriage. I had my family.
Right.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes there's pressure from the grown kids. What do you mean you want to date? You're not supposed to anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Supposed to mourn dad for the rest of your life.
Exactly. You're supposed to now live in a way to make me comfortable.
A widow. Just be an old widow. Here's a shawl. Right? Yeah. And
right.
In older communities, another thing people have known about for a long time. In older communities, women tend to start outnumbering men.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes 3 or 4 to 1.
Oh yeah.
So, and again, talk about adjusting and adapting. Dating criteria changes. That sometimes the hottest guy in the neighborhood is the guy who drives at night.
Oh, that's right. And if you can drive at night in like Century Village and some of these elder communities, if a guy can drive at night and with or without Viagra, if he can get an erection, he's a god.
He might have 3-4 girlfriends. Yeah, and then we have to talk about STDs, and they don't want to hear about
They don't want to
condoms.
hear about that.
And,
nope.
yeah.
But that's that's a whole nother conversation. The
you
whole
remember
idea.
that guy at the temple in Boca? We did that Sex After 60. This was before Viagra even.
Oh yeah.
And he stood. We had to get in the HIV message at the end, and he stood up and he said, "I'm 85 years old and I have a girlfriend, and you're telling me I have to worry about getting a disease that could kill me in 15 years? I should be so lucky." And we were both speechless. Like, oh,
he was right.
What do you say to that?
And again, I in particular, but we have been kind of a lone voice in this field, because I've been saying for a very long time that the messaging to older adults about STI prevention, HIV prevention, pregnancy is not an issue, right? Mm-hmm. But looking at the disease prevention, we're giving 80-year-olds exactly the same message as we give 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work. It's not right. You can't. It's a different message. And it also has to emphasize condoms differently. Right? Just like we do with 18-year-olds. Wear a condom, drop the mic, walk away. Can't do that with an 80-year-old. It's a different issue.
Yeah.
Right? So that's another conversation. That we can have.
Put in a plug for a good book, and maybe we'll get her to come on the show. Our colleague Joan Price, and a book called Naked at Our Age, specifically for
a wonderful book.
This topic of seniors and sexuality. And why don't we call it a wrap?
I think we should.
Yeah.
All right. One more toast.
One more toast to all those old fogies having a good old time.
That's right.
Keeping it sexy.
Keep at it.
That'll do it for this week's Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. We'll be here on YouTube next Friday and every Friday at 7 p.m. East Coast time.
Indeed. So join us then. Thank you for watching, and stay well.
Thanks for watching Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us each week on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of the latest developments in the ever-changing world of sex and sexuality.